I found out why babies are born crying. Most people assume babies cry because they're cold, that they're shocked or frightened or confused, that the world is too loud, too bright, too rough for something just seconds old, that the crying is just a physical reaction, air flooding lungs, muscles spasming, the body waking up to pain and sensation. That's what the textbooks say anyway. But I don't read textbooks anymore. I work in a facility that doesn't officially exist. It has no name, no external signage, and no windows. The only thing that pass through its doors are patients and personnel with level 5 authorization or higher. And even most of them don't really know what we actually study. My badge says I'm a Perinatal Neurological Systems Research Associate, which is a polite way of saying I monitor fetal brains. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm a biologist with clearance to observe the final stages of human development. Not because I know more than others, but because I know how to shut up and not ask the wrong questions. Or at least, I used to. We were part of a program called Liminal. It wasn't an acronym, no one explained what it meant, but I didn't have to ask. I saw the word in enough reports to understand. This place wasn't just about monitoring fetal development, it was about studying what happens in the moments between breath and silence, and between womb and air, between memory and forgetting. The first time I noticed something strange was 3 months ago. We were running simultaneous EEG scans on 6 patients, all 3rd trimester, healthy and stable. The readings were normal for the most part. Shallow REM cycles, mild limb twitching, rapid eye movement consistent with fetal dream states. Then, patient 6B2 signal spiked. Not randomly, not a jolt of stress or a heart rate anomaly. It was structured. The waveform pattern began as 6 pulses, evenly spaced, nearly identical in amplitude. Then a plateau. Then a sudden spike that crested and flattened out in a perfect razor-edged curve. It looked like noise, until you looked closer. It looked like a language. I flagged the sample, labeled it non-random interference, and moved on. It didn't match anything in the fetal data libraries. No sleep pattern, no reflexive movement, no neural cascade. I ran it through our diagnostics a second time. Same shape. Ran it through the artifact filter. Still there. I checked the timestamp. It happened 11 minutes before labor began. I thought it was a fluke, until I saw the same form in patient 6B3 the following night. A different mother, different baby, same pattern, same timing. I didn't sleep well that week. I didn't tell the other techs. They were focused on delivery viability and oxygenation levels, not brainwave semantics. And besides, no one likes someone who thinks too much about what might be hidden in the noise. But I kept collecting. By the end of the month, I had 9 identical recordings, all within the last 30 minutes of gestation, all shaped like a transmission. So I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I ran the waveform in reverse. Not just reversed in time, inverted on the signal scale. Upside down, inside out. The shape transformed, flattened. It took on symmetry I hadn't noticed before. The software flagged 3 segments of harmonic correspondence, which is what it does when it detects order in something it thought was chaotic. It was like peeling back the sound of a scream and hearing a sentence underneath. Only, I didn't hear anything. Not with my ears, at least. It was like my mind absorbed something, but couldn't play it back. I got nauseous, cold. I remember standing up and needing to steady myself against the desk. It felt like the room had tilted by a few degrees, like gravity itself was suddenly unsure of which way it was supposed to point. That night, I had the first dream. It wasn't vivid. It wasn't even fully visual. It was a sensation of falling through something that didn't want to let me go. A slow descent through layers of pressure, like being pulled through thick gel. Only it wasn't sticky or heavy. It was watching. I remember feeling very certain, in the way only dreams can make you feel, that I was being seen from all directions at once, by something that didn't blink, something that recognized me. I woke up with my hands clenched so tightly I couldn't feel my fingers for 15 minutes. The next morning, I didn't go into work. I stayed home and combed through our archival database. Hundreds of birth records and thousands of EEG scans from the last 6 years. I wrote a script to filter them by terminal proximity to birth and amplitude irregularity. I narrowed it down to 37 samples. 29 matched the waveform within 98%. 8 matched exactly. I isolated those 8, reversed and converted each single one of them, and then I layered them together. The result wasn't louder, it wasn't clearer, but it felt closer. Like something pressed against the underside of my skin, like the bones in my ear canal weren't vibrating with sound, they were just being observed. I had another dream. This time, I wasn't falling, I was floating. Or being floated would be more accurate, I guess. Like something was moving me without touching me. I heard crying, soft at first, then louder, and then louder still. Not one voice, thousands. Babies all crying in perfect unison, not with pain, not with panic, but with knowing. Like they understood something that I didn't. And then I saw it. Just for a second, a shape that wasn't a shape. Like a face made of static etched into a wall of warm red light, staring back from behind the membrane of whatever space I'd passed through. I woke up screaming. I'd never screamed like that before. Not as an adult, not even as a child, I think. But it wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was recognition. And for a moment, I understood. We don't cry because we're confused. We don't cry because we're scared. We cry because we remember something we were supposed to forget. And some part of us knows it's still watching, even now, even here. There's a moment in science, rare but real, when a theory stops being a theory and becomes a doorway. The moment you stop asking, what if, and start realizing the question was never yours to ask in the first place. I stopped sleeping after the third dream, not by choice. My body just wouldn't let go anymore. Every time I drifted, even for a second, I'd feel it waiting. That thick membrane of pressure, the same feeling from the recordings, like a tunnel made not of matter, but expectation. I jolt back awake with my hands clenched and throat dry, a heart pounding like I'd been running for hours. It was always the same place, the same warmth, the same watching. I started referring to it in my notes as the threshold, a placeholder, but one that felt more honest than any jargon I could invent. I began cataloging the waveform spikes in reverse, not as anomalies, but as responses, like sonar pings, an echo from somewhere. The shape was too consistent. Something was pushing back through the signal. Something intelligent. Or if not intelligent, aware. It didn't want to be understood. It wanted it to be remembered. And babies, freshly born, minds still soft, neurons still firing wild and unchecked, were remembering something the rest of us had forgotten, or suppressed, or had ripped away from us on the way out. I had to know more. The lab had long since shut down the Level 3 archives, citing funding cuts and ethical redundancy. I bypassed the lockout manually. Not hard if you know the old biosignature override trick. Most people forget these systems were built on decades-old infrastructure. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Early-stage experiments, the ones run before I arrived, had involved extending labor. Not inducing it, delaying it. Holding fetuses in the womb for an extra 30 to 60 minutes beyond normal viable conditions, using a combination of chemical stasis and non-invasive neural inhibitors. It was horrific. But what they found was worse. In the majority of extended labor subjects, the waveform didn't just persist, it intensified. The baby's heart rate remained stable, vitals normal, but their brains lit up like firestorms. All areas, sensory, auditory, even abstract reasoning zones, became hyperactive in the final minutes. It was as if they were processing something. The final logs of one researcher, anonymized in the system, read, "We held subject 12 in for 49 minutes. He didn't cry when he was born. He just stared straight into the light. Didn't blink. When I picked him up, he reached out. Not like a newborn, like he knew me." That researcher resigned the same day. No forwarding address, no contact since. But I think I understand now. These infants weren't silent because they were stunned or sick. They were silent because they had seen something. And silence in that context is not peace. It's reverence. It's fear. I cross-referenced the recordings with global childbirth data, the public and private hospitals, every continent, every known language group. There were anomalies everywhere. Infants who didn't cry until minutes later. Some not at all. But the reports were always scrubbed, sanitized, except for one, a midwife's journal, uploaded to a private research blog dated 1998, northern Finland. I don't really know how it survived censorship. Anyway, this was her entry. "A boy was born today. Eyes wide. No scream. He watched me the entire time we cleaned him. When I held him, he reached for my mouth, like he wanted to stop me from speaking. When he finally cried, it was at sunset. It wasn't a normal cry. It sounded like he was mourning." I printed that page and pinned it above my workstation. I wasn't the only one seeing it, just the only one still looking. The line between waking and dreaming, for me, started to blur. It wasn't sleep anymore, just long periods of stillness where my body refused to move. And something filled in that blank space. I began seeing rooms in my head, long, red-lit corridors, crib after crib, arranged like pews in a church, each one rocking ever so slightly, even though there was no movement in the air. I saw figures, not human, not in any shape we understand. They hovered above the cribs, observing, waiting. They weren't there to harm, I think. They were there to witness. And something about that, about being watched as you enter this world, marked and measured and silently accepted, that was more horrifying than any violence I could have imagined. Whatever's on the other side of the threshold doesn't stop us. It lets us through. And that's worse. We were never meant to survive the passage, but something decided we should. One morning, I woke up on the lab floor. I don't remember lying down. My last memory was staring at the waveform, overlaying all 37 reverse samples into one composition. I had left the audio on. I must have drifted for only a few seconds, but when I came to, I had bite marks on the inside of my cheek, blood on the floor, and dried tears. And in my hand, clenched so tightly my knuckles had gone white, was a printout. The waveform. But it wasn't the same shape. The pattern had deepened. Not visually, not technically, intuitively. Like the signal had responded to being heard. Like it had changed for me. Like it wanted to be seen. I destroyed the printout. Not out of fear, out of shame. Because a part of me didn't want to forget what I saw in it. A part of me was beginning to understand it. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in the lab, alone. I sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the servers, watching the reversed waveform loop across the monitor again and again. And somewhere between loop 30 and loop 31, I heard a cry. Not through the speaker, not in the building, inside me. Like an echo of something I once knew, and had spent my entire life trying to forget. I stopped hearing with my ears, sometime around the second week. That sounds dramatic, I know, but it's the only way I can describe what happened when the waveform stopped being data and started becoming something else entirely. It wasn't just being heard, it was being received. Like it had found a new frequency, something beneath hearing. Or maybe something older than that. I'd installed soundproofing in the lab office 2 years ago, when a neighboring MRI unit kept tripping my equipment sensors. At the time, I thought of silence as a tool, something I could control, a variable to be eliminated. But now I understand. Silence is something else entirely. A gate. The waveform had evolved. The original pattern had been a peak, a scream in the data, a final flash of consciousness. But what I was seeing now was symmetry, elegance, a shape folding in and on itself. Again and again until it resembled a kind of language. Not human, not even alive in the traditional sense, but communicative. The babies weren't making the waveform, they were receiving it. Just before birth, just as they were about to open their eyes. And then, they screamed. Not from pain, not from the lungs gasping for breath. From remembrance. Whatever waited between womb and world wasn't just some dimensional veil. It was a sentience. And the waveform wasn't noise, it was its name. Or something like a name. A label burned into the memory of every passing soul. I stopped recording the data. There was no point anymore. It wasn't about science. It was about witnessing. I began waking up with scraps of phrases in my mouth, words I didn't know, structures that didn't belong in any known language, not even phonetic. Just shapes, struggling to emerge through the limitations of a human throat. I started writing them down. 1 page became 50, then 100. I didn't recognize most of them, but the ones I did made my bones ache. Like my skeleton was trying to crawl away from something it didn't want to carry anymore. I took time off from the lab, faked a respiratory illness. Management was too distracted to ask questions. I retreated to a cabin about 4 hours outside the city. No cell signal, no landline. Just a generator, a portable hard drive of the waveform data, and a notebook I hadn't been able to stop filling. That's when the dreams changed. No longer floating, no more corridors, just a room. Always the same size, 10 by 12 feet, no doors, no windows. The floor was soft, but not carpet. The walls were wet, but not dripping. And in the center, a crib. I never saw what was inside. Only that moment I stepped closer, the air would hum, like exhaling against the surface of a mirror. And I would wake up crying, actual tears soaking my pillow. Mouth open, lungs heaving, like I'd just come out of water. Like I had been born again. The worst part? I knew it wasn't mine. The cry wasn't mine. It belonged to something else. I was just echoing it. One morning, I found scratches on the cabin wall. Not animal marks, not wood damage, symbols. The same ones from my notebook, dozens of them, scraped lightly into the wall above my bed in looping arcs. Some overlapping, some interrupted, like the writer had been pulled away mid-sentence. My hands were raw. I didn't remember doing it, but I didn't deny it either. I started to suspect the waveform wasn't just a message. It was a memory file, encoded into our consciousness at the moment of passage, before the brain could block it, before the soul could shield itself, before the scream wiped it away. That's what the first cry is. A kind of burn. A firewall. But sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it didn't purge the memory. And those are the babies who stay silent. Not because they're at peace, but because they've kept it. And something knows. Something waits. I returned to the lab a week later. The hallway felt tighter. The ceilings lower. The fluorescent lights buzzed slightly off key. Just enough to make you wonder if you were imagining it. The office plants were all dead. I hadn't owned any plants. I turned on the monitors and found my workstation still logged in. The waveform was frozen mid-cycle, but the timestamp didn't make sense. It said the last recording was ongoing. Live feed. But the lab had been empty for days. I played it anyway, and for the first time, the waveform didn't display as a graph. It showed an image, just a silhouette at first, but as it rotated, the shape resolved itself. Not into a face, but into something that wanted to be a face. As if it were trying to meet me halfway. A suggestion of eyes, a mouth wide open, not screaming, breathing. It stared for 12 seconds, and the screen went black. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I walked to the maternity wing above our lab. I had full clearance. No one stopped me. Room 2104. Infant girl, born at 11:42 p.m. Apgar score 9. She was asleep when I arrived. The nurse had stepped out. The mother was sedated post C-section. I stood by the crib, hands shaking, throat tight. She looked normal, pink, peaceful. Her lips twitched, a dream reflex. And then she opened her eyes, directly at me, and smiled. It was the smallest movement, but it shattered something inside me, because I recognized her expression. It wasn't joy. It was triumph. Like she remembered making it through. Like she remembered me. And in that moment, I understood the waveform, all of it. The shape, the pattern, the message. Not a cry for help. Not a song of fear. A warning. We're not alone in this process. Something lets us pass through. And if we don't scream, it stays with us. Inside. Watching. Waiting. And when we're old enough to forget, that's when it starts to whisper. That's when we start to hear the first sound again. The one from before. The one we were never supposed to carry into this world. They say trauma rewires the brain. They say the longer you dwell on something, the more it becomes a part of you. Like scar tissue curling inward, wrapping itself around every impulse and reflex until you forget who you were before it started. I think that's wrong. What I'm feeling now isn't trauma. It's return. Every second since I looked into that newborn's eyes has felt like peeling away a disguise I didn't know I was wearing. The world hasn't changed. The lab, the streets, the sky, it's all the same. But I see the gaps now. The places where something presses inward, where the walls between then and now are thin. You wouldn't notice them, not if you weren't marked. But I've been marked, and I think maybe I always was. The crying has stopped. Not mine, theirs. There was a baby in 2114 who never cried. A second one in 2111, a boy in NICU B, delivered in silence, whose eyes won't close, even when sedated. I check the monitors. I compare waveforms. They match mine. The waveform isn't just a message, it's a key, a genetic tag, a burn across the soul carried through every scream and passed like a virus when it isn't burned clean. I'm infected with a memory that does not belong to me. It belongs to the place before, the threshold. And the more I think about it, the more it opens. A corridor behind the eyes, a hum in the bones. It's not a metaphor, it's physical. There is a room inside me now. I dream of it even when I'm awake. A room of soft walls, no light, and a voice that's not my voice, whispering just beyond hearing. You were never meant to come through whole. I found video files that weren't mine, hidden in waveform logs, visual overlays in the data, impossible by any programming standards we use, clips stitched in the static, short, silent, and shaking. They show births, not ours, not human, forms writhing through black membranes, limbs emerging, mouths open, but making no sound, and above them, shapes, indistinct, tall, and watching, always watching. I tried deleting them. They came back, different each time, sharper, like the file was learning from being deleted, like it was adapting. One showed me standing in the lab, eyes white, mouth open, not screaming, mouthing. I played the footage on loop, slowed it to 0.1 speed. I said 3 words. It has me. I don't remember recording it, but I doubt that I did. There's something inside my voice now. When I speak, infants stare. When I whisper, electronics flicker. When I try to sleep, I wake up standing in places I don't remember walking to. The cabin, the maternity ward, one night my old bedroom in my mother's house, 10 states away. I no longer question these things, not because I don't understand them, but because they understand me. I'm not the first. The archives go back further than I thought. Some analog buried in the basement marked pre-project. Paper files, tapes. They didn't start with waveform analysis. They started with post-mortem silent studies. Infants who died in utero without ever crying. The early researchers believed silence was a symptom, but the records say otherwise. The children weren't silent because they couldn't cry. They were silent because something kept them. I don't know what they meant by kept, but the words appear again and again. Kept at the border, kept between breath and name, kept from crossing. In one report, a psychiatrist wrote, their eyes move before their heartbeats. They look up and not around. They reach, not for us, but for what's still behind them. I burned the tapes, not out of fear, out of respect. It didn't matter. The dreams got stronger. And now the room comes even when I'm not asleep, while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm pouring coffee. A sudden flicker of static across my vision, and the world folds inwards. The sound drops out, the walls press soft and warm around me. The air smells like amniotic fluid and burnt copper, and I see the crib again. Only now I know what's in it. Not a child, not a person, but something mimicking it. Like a placeholder, a decoy, something to fool the body while the mind is pulled somewhere else. I lean over the crib and see my own eyes staring back. Mouth open, not crying, smiling. I'm not writing this to warn you. It's too late for warnings. You've already passed through. The scream burned it out of you, but that doesn't mean it's gone. Just sleeping, just waiting. The babies who don't cry, they're not broken. They're chosen, not special, not gifted. They're marked. And one day, when enough of them walk among us, quiet, hollow-eyed, and remembering, the cry will return. Not from the newborns, from us. The cry of recognition, one of being seen from the other side of the threshold, and realizing we never made it out. Not fully, not cleanly. Something has not let go of us. And one day, we're gonna find out what that is.